I've thought about the Internet of Things, especially monitoring type scenarios, much like a utility. So for example, in a water utility, you would have a point of collection. So you're pulling the water out of an aquifer or pulling it in. So you're collecting it, you're transmitting it through big Super Mario Brothers sized tubes all the way to a point of aggregation, which might be a water tower, water treatment facility. And then you've got distribution, which sends it to homes, restaurants, industrial plants, and points of consumption where the resource is actually being used. And in the utility world, they call it the first mile and the last mile. First mile is point of collection to where it's aggregated, because you need big giant backhoes and entirely different groups of specialists to address that, to pull the resource. Last mile is getting it out to wherever it is being consumed. And if we replace water as the resource to data as the resource, it still holds up. You want to treat it all while it's one place, normalize the data, things like that. And over the years, companies that want to go into smart product development either have a strong suit. They're like, we got the first mile on lockdown. Wait, we can get the data. We could even get it to some place. We don't know where to put it, but where do you want it to go? But if that last mile is the value extraction out of the data, that now that you have it, that seems to be really hard. I make an industrial pump, or I'm making some sort of kiosk in some ways, right? It processes it, buys it, dispenses it, does the thing. But there's all of those jobs that you don't necessarily consider from that value extraction. Where is it that you see the blockers when people come in saying, I built a thing, but now I'm having a tough time? What are those blockers look like?
Well, certainly from a data perspective, yes, I agree. You're grabbing it from all different systems and all kinds of different environments. And then you want to pull that together and make it useful. Not too dissimilar from the analogy, there's a scrubbing that takes place of that data to ensure that these systems are all speaking the same language, or you're aligning that data. When you aggregate it, it's all based off of clean data versus anomalies that are coming in and could potentially throw you off. Getting it to a point where the data that's coming in is scrubbed and flattened so that it can be reported on in an efficient way, I think is one of the big challenges that a lot of organizations face, because there's a lot of sophistication that goes into just understanding how to get that data cleaned and making sure that the anomalies that are coming through aren't influencing the overall outcomes that are going out there. And then it comes back to connectivity in terms of making sure that once that data exists and it's been scrubbed and now there's actions to be taken based on that data, getting that to the locations so that they have that capability, or they have that intelligence now to act on that data. Like your analogy, that last mile, it's not just the kiosk sending the transactions to the enterprise, but the enterprise actually pushing some of that data back down so that the kiosks are smarter. They know how to promote certain titles better at a Redbox location, or in another scenario, maybe they're discounting a certain product because they know the inventory levels are higher than where they should be, to try to move more of that and get that out there. I think that's a key piece, is just getting the data, the right data, and understanding what the right data is. That's a difficult thing to master.
Well, and that's a good example of that distribution component. Instead of how much water, what flow, what pressure, does it need to be potable or not?
Yeah.
Now with data, it's who gets it, roles, permissions, security settings. You get access to our sales data, but you don't get any of the customer information because PCI compliance. If it were a medical kiosk, you don't get any personal identifiable health information, but you can get date of birth. But that's it. So it's that series of decisions that gets really nuanced. It's not just, you have at it and use what you need. Because sometimes regulations force your hand, whether it's compliance regulations or it's just sensitive information that someone doesn't need access to.
I think so. And to your point, you almost have to assume that once it's outside of your control, that it's going to go everywhere. That data that you hold core, you need to make sure that what you're handing out to distributing either to a bunch of locations or to a vendor or something else, that's limited to just the information that they need.